What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Let's Talk Movies. I'm Brad, and yesterday we got our very first glimpse into the rebranded DC Studios release slate helmed by James Gunn and Peter Safran, and now titled Gods and Monsters. Now, this slate includes a slew of films that are loosely connected, some more than others, to what DC is currently releasing over the next couple of years. Upcoming projects include Superman Legacy, The Brave and the Bold, Lantern, Swamp Thing, Paradise Lost, The Authority, and a whole bunch more. If you're a longtime listener to our show, you'll know that my co-host Miguel and myself are big-time supporters of a complete DC relaunch. It is not that we weren't supporters of the Snyderverse or we hated what the DCEU was doing in the beginning, but we both just kind of felt tired, and we felt like after the Snyder Cut stuff was completely out the door, and after all of the drama and all of the chaos that has happened with this studio and with this universe, we both just kind of felt like the ship had sailed. It was time for something new. And with that something new, there are a few really exciting things on the horizon for these characters and for this universe. And I'm really rooting for what James Gunn is trying to do. So here are 5 things that have me really, really excited about this rebranding and about the future of the DC universe. And before we go on, please be sure to leave this video a like and consider subscribing to our channel. We do new live shows every single week, and there will be a big one about all of this DC action, so stay tuned for that as well. First off, number 1 is the concept of DC Elseworlds. I really like that rather than starting with a completely blank slate and axing arguably the 2 best things that DC has going for them right now, which is the Matt Reeves Batman and the Todd Phillips Joker universes, they're acknowledging the fact that multiple universes, or at least multiple versions of these characters, do exist, just like they did with the Elseworld comic book runs. This also leaves the door open for many of the animated series projects and video games to continue doing what they do best. Teen Titan Go, the Arkham games, the Harley Quinn series. I mean, we could go on forever about any other projects that have been very popular amongst comic book fans. I mean, for years, DC has really, really thrived in that animated world and in that video game world. So I'll be excited to see them continue to do those things even after this rebranding and this kind of remodel of what the universe looks like takes place. Now, this one baffled me when I first heard it, and if we're being completely honest with each other, it intrigues me more than it excites me. But number 2 is the idea that the Flash will be the reset button, for lack of a better word, or the bridge between the old DCU and the new DCU. I'll be very intrigued to see how they pull this one off, as well as which characters remain from the previous continuity. We know that Viola Davis as Amanda Waller and John Cena's Peacemaker are safe. We know that Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne / Batman and Henry Cavill's Clark Kent / Superman are both out of the picture, but there are a few different questions that still remain. Will Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot remain as Aquaman and as Wonder Woman? Will Ezra Miller continue to play the Flash after this entire ordeal and after the universal reset? Will Keaton's Batman make any more appearances throughout the multiverse? There's a lot of questions as to the character continuity, in addition to the story continuity and kind of how things are going to transition and transpire as we move into a new world. And if I'm being completely honest, I had lost interest in The Flash given the mess that was the DCEU up to this point, all of this controversy surrounding Ezra Miller and the cancellation of Batgirl, which would have featured a huge Michael Keaton connection. But with that being said, I'm starting to wonder if this film is going to be DC's saving grace. If The Flash can really pull off this huge reset, and if James Gunn and Peter Safran can really sculpt this mess of a thing, or at least mess that it once was, into one cohesive picture, I think it could maybe be one of the biggest success stories in comic book movie history. Number 3, not throwing in the Justice League just for the sake of throwing in the Justice League. Okay, I was worried that James Gunn and Peter Safran were going to fall into the same trap that the old DCEU did, where it's like an all-out rush to make it to the Justice League, and it's an all-out rush to get to the big team-up between these characters, to just throw origin stories at them and express lane this thing into a team-up. I really, really appreciate that they're looking to give each of these characters meaningful standalone stories before jumping the gun into any other major team-ups. And of course, the characters are going to cross over with one another. That's what's so neat about comic book universes. But all I'm saying is give each character their own little area of the DCEU their fair due before jumping and chopping at the bit for something bigger. Which leads us into number 4. No conventional origin stories. Not retelling the same origin story for our main characters, especially for Superman and for Batman. At this point, as comic book fans, we know the story of how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. We know the story of how Clark Kent becomes Superman. There is no need to continue treading the same water again and again and again. And that was one of my favorite things about what Matt Reeves did with the Batman. We were just dropped into this dark, gothic world and this dark detective story where Batman is feared and Batman is vengeance. Let's focus on new stories that bring these characters into new territory. Now, granted, I know that for projects like Creature Commandos or for Booster Gold, there's going to have to be some type of origin story because those characters have never gotten a live adaptation of them before. So even for Green Lantern Corps, you could say that you could dive into the mythology and the mythos of the Corps itself and make it a big galactic epic story. Rather than focusing on one lantern at a time, you could tell the story of multiple lanterns there. You could cover a lot of ground in an adaptation that covers multiple people rather than just focusing on the origin story of one hero in and of itself. Number 5 is Swamp Thing, which is pretty exciting as a horror fan. In his announcement video from yesterday, James Gunn described this project as a very dark horror story about the origins of the monster that is Swamp Thing. Now, if you know anything about Swamp Thing and his comic book origins, you'll know that there is a lot of heartbreak within that story, which involves Alex Olsen being murdered by his best friend in an attempt to marry his wife, a story arc which began in House of Secrets issue 92 from 1971, which was published at the time by DC Comics. And of course, Olsen didn't really die, but was transformed into the Swamp Thing, which seek revenge for what happened to him. Now, personally, that original arc is my favorite version of Swamp Thing and of the Swamp Thing story, and I think that there's a really special opportunity here to approach this like a classic 50s or 60s monster movie, similarly to what was done with the Universal monster films back in the day. Lots of that old school black and white horror look and feel, lots of tragedy, lots of classic scares. It could add some real diversity to DC's slate of films, so I'm super, super excited to see what that looks like. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for me. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on DC's first chapter, Gods and Monsters. Let me know what projects you are most looking forward to. New episodes of Let's Talk Movies and Purely and Simply Evil premiere every single week at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at LTM Podcast KY. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.